To my chorus. I'm Bernard Hickey for the Kaka. It is Tuesday, September the 23rd. I wanted to talk today about population growth, where it comes from, and how it's been used by both flavours of government over the last 20 years to grow GDP in a cheap, sugar-fueled way that means politicians don't have to ask voters for higher taxes or to increase debt to pay for the infrastructure for all of this migration. So what we end up with is GDP growth and population growth without the infrastructure, which is a recipe for overloaded EDs, congested roads, and a poisoned environment. Let's look at some news that's just come out this morning from the government, which of course is facing an economy that contracted in the June quarter. And the announcement has come from Economic Development Minister or Economic Growth Minister, Nicola Willis, and Erica Stanford, who is the Immigration Minister. The point of my podcast and video today is to ask the question, are we okay with GDP growth that's led by population growth, but without the infrastructure to go with it, which is what we've seen in the last 20 years. So let's first look at what's been announced today. The government's announced 2 new work-to-residence pathways for people in various trades who are currently on 3-year work visas. They're supposed to leave the country after 3 years, although many do get rollovers, and essentially loosening the restrictions on applying for a residency visa so that someone working for as little as a year and a half, 18 months, on the median wage of $33.50, that's $69,000 a year. And these professions, trades include the likes of hairdressers, painters, bricklayers, tilers, panel beaters, chefs, cooks, gardeners. And also there's an announcement to make it faster for students to get residency. This will encourage people who are already here to stay and will make it easier for employers to keep the people they've got. And it follows a series of pleas from employers to make it easier to keep people who want to stay. And the latest call came from the owner of the Chocolate Fish Cafe in Wellington. Those who've been there or lived there may know it. It's a popular cafe, and the owner, John Pennington, came out yesterday via RNZ and also the Post to say that he wanted an easier pathway to residency for workers in his cafe, including chefs and cooks. He said that at the moment, the same people who were chefs and cooks were going to work in other jobs, for example, corrections, and he was losing these workers and he couldn't get locals. Now, immediately, Louise Upston, the Tourism Hospitality Minister, came back and said, well, how about you try and employ some of the locals, because there are 19,000 people unemployed in Wellington, and about 6,000 of them are aged 18 to 24. And that's essentially the argument that could be made to Nicola Willis and Erica Stanford. Now, just to give you a sense of, the pressure that the hospitality sector are under, we had another closure yesterday in Wellington of the caffeinated Dragon Games cafe owned by Reece Khan, just to give you a sense of the stress out there in the economy and why the government might be looking to do this. He said that plenty of people want to come into the store, buy something, play games, have a coffee, but they just don't have the spare money to do so anymore. Now, it's worth looking at that and challenging it, because when you look at bank deposits, they have been growing for most of the last 8 years at a rate of $10 billion per annum. Now, there was a period when interest rates rose, when that wasn't the case, but they are rising again now, largely as money has flowed through into the accounts of people with rental properties in the form of tax cuts. And they're being saved at the moment. And if you look at the change in bank deposits, they are currently back up rising at a rate of over $20 billion per annum. And when you look at the amount of savings that we've seen over the last 5 years since COVID, we're talking an extra $80 billion or so sitting in term deposit accounts. And that is before you look at the $20 billion extra that's been repaid on mortgages. So the point I'm trying to make here is that there are complaints about the economy not growing fast enough. And one of the reasons is that the people who got the tax cuts and also who got the payments during the COVID crisis as job subsidies put that in the bank and haven't spent it. That's because they are those who are wealthier in New Zealand and don't spend 100% of their income. Essentially, we have a liquidity crisis driven by an increase in the share of wealth and income going to those who spend less of their money as a share of the total income. Now, just a couple of other bits and pieces that have cropped up today. New report out of Environment Canterbury showing that over a third of Canterbury's rivers are unswimmable, and that's no improvement from last year. And the quality of all of the different places where you could go swimming, rivers and lakes and seas, have been deteriorating for the last 5 years or so in Canterbury. And a few places there where you don't want to go swimming, including the Waimakariri, the Hurunui and the Waipara rivers. Now, another thing that's cropped up today, the Select Committee considering the legislation for the allowing 70 square metre granny flats came back. The report from the Select Committee came back, and they want to make sure that people who do create one of these granny flats, which by the way are now being marketed as 2 to 3 bedroom homes, that they are subject to consents when there's a natural hazards issue, and of course when they need plumbing and drainage. And that was a unanimous report. Now, in the papers today, the Post leads with our position on Palestine being unclear, and also that call for residency. Interestingly, out of the Waikato Times, there's another surge in stories about rates increases and an extension and a consent for the extension of the Waikato Expressway. And also when you look at what's happening down south in the press, a focus there on a demolition of a large building and concern about a solar panel farm in Otago. RNZ's leading this morning with a good scoop about the issues with emergency departments, and that's something I've included as the scoop of the day today, and a good cartoon there from Emma Cook. I'm Bernard Hickey. It is Tuesday, September the 23rd.